disaster Hurricane Katrina was. And it was really just stunning because when you think back on it, Katrina may have been unprecedented, but it certainly wasn't unpredicted. And when you spend all day seeing bodies and destruction and no army or National Guard in sight, hearing politicians praising one another was infuriating. In Mississippi, in the days after the storm, the silence was really shocking. I'm not sure that ever really came across on television. There was no heavy earth-moving equipment. There was no truck with aid rumbling past. I'd stand in a field of timber that was once a street, and you could hear the wind blowing through the remnants of people's lives. You'd hear a sheet of plastic caught in a tree rustling in the breeze. You'd hear flies swarming over the corpse of a dog. You'd hear a helicopter moving on the horizon, a few seconds of intrusion, and then silence once again. My first day in New Orleans after the storm, I saw a man terribly bloated and badly disfigured who sprawled out dead on the roof of a car. I saw another person a few blocks away floating in their backyard, just a few feet away from an unopened box of MREs. I was told by one police officer that people were being tied to lampposts with their shoelaces so they didn't just float away. So much of what happened in New Orleans threatens to be forgotten. I wonder if any of you recognize the name Ethel Freeman. Ethel Freeman was 91 years old. She was a woman in a wheelchair, and her son, Herbert Freeman Jr., brought her to the convention center 2 days after Hurricane Katrina. They'd been told that there was help at the convention center. They'd been told there were doctors there, and that there was water there, and there were buses to take them away. And we know, of course, that they were lied to. They came first by canoe, and then her son had to carry her the last couple of blocks, and her health wasn't good even before the storm. But 2 days after the storm, when she finally got to the convention center, she arrived dehydrated and thinking she was going to get relief. But at the convention center, of course, she found no relief, nor did the thousands of other people who were told to go there. And they found no escape. And all Ethel Freeman and her son could do was sit there along with the thousands of others and pray. And 91-year-old Ethel Freeman survived the storm, survived 2 days after the storm, but she didn't survive the third day. She didn't survive the convention center. And she died there in her wheelchair with her son by her side. And her son, Herbert, didn't really know what to do after she died, and someone had a blanket, and they told him to just put this blanket over his mother and to wheel her to the side of a building and just leave her there. And he had no other option, and that's what he ended up doing. And that's where she stayed for the rest of the week. A dead woman, a mother, a churchgoer with a blanket over her head cast aside. Forgotten except by her son, of course. And her photograph was taken, and it was actually put on the picture of just about every newspaper in the United States and also around the world. But no one knew what her name was at the time. And her son had the foresight to write his name and her name and his cell phone number on a piece of paper and put it in her pocket so that when authorities did finally find her body, once he had been evacuated and the others had been evacuated, and they came to the bodies, as he assumed they would come very quickly for her, that they would see her in her pocket, they would find the phone number and let him know where she was and where he could go to retrieve her. But he didn't get a call. Weeks went by and then months went by. And it wasn't until about 6 months later that he was able to find out where his mother had ended up, and she was being stored in a warehouse in New Orleans. And there are dozens of people actually still being stored in a warehouse there who have been unplanned. And I tell you this story because I think it's important that we remember what happened there. And how people there were treated might very well be how we're going to be treated the next time disaster strikes us. We all know now that governments failed in the wake of Katrina, but individuals did not. And that's what gives me hope, because I see that every day in every place that I've been. Individuals make a difference. The difference between success and failure, the difference between hope and heartache, the difference between life and death itself. Individuals standing up, not waiting to be told what to do, but taking responsibility for themselves. Governments failed in Katrina, but citizens and volunteers and students did not. Charities and students, church groups, thousands, tens of thousands of them have been to New Orleans and Mississippi in the past 3.5 years, and the progress that's occurred there would not be where it's at if it wasn't for these volunteers. Neighbors helping neighbors, strangers helping strangers, college students deciding to choose to go there over spring break instead of ending up in a Joe Francis video. But strangers reaching out to one another is what makes the difference. And I said at the start of this, it is very easy to turn away from the plight of others, but when we resist that temptation, remarkable changes can and do occur.